because it's invaluable and means people can have a great night and still get home safe. I also want to champion all of our SU policies and campaigns. So why me? I'm a dedicated and driven candidate to build a great student experience for all students here at Winchester. Some people might say I'm too serious, but I think that's because it just shows how much I want to secure the role and I want to give it the respect it deserves. It's a huge role with a lot of responsibility, but I have big ideas and how I can implement them. I'm ambitious, confident and professional, and I have a realistic and achievable manifesto. It's an honour to run for this role, and I hope you will consider me when voting opens tonight. Thank you.
Please may I invite both candidates to join me on stage. Could you please just make sure you sit in the two closest to the wall? So we'll start with Megan for this question. And I want to be clear, I want only one. If elected, what will be your top priority as Student Union President?
Okay, my top priority as Student Union President would be creating a great student experience for everyone here at Winchester. I think sometimes there's groups of students here that can sometimes get lost in the crowd, and I also think there's some people that I'd maybe go even to the extent that they may be ignored in their wants and things that go on here. I want to change that and make sure that the experience here is for all individuals, not just for certain people, and that comes with championing my policies and putting my manifesto in place.
Danny?
When it comes to the main priority of me as Student Union President, it comes down to representing students. As President of the Student Union, you are representing the full 7,000 plus students that are a part of the Winchester Student Union, and each one of them deserves the respect, the time and the necessity to have as good a time at the university as possible. It's what I've built my manifesto around, it's what I've tried to do my best to find out about all sorts of different people's wants and needs, what people struggle with, and I think that's pretty much my focus really, is to focus on the students, because that is what Winchester Student Union is all about.
Question 2. Any election manifesto commitment often requires a significant ability to build positive relationships or will cost a significant amount of money to achieve. And as we've all heard, money doesn't grow on trees. So how will you gain the appropriate required funding to fulfil elements of your election promises, Danny?
First off, I think the amount that we get as a grant from the Student Union is very small. Something around about £32 per student of the £9,000 a year is a grant from the university. And I believe that the Chancellor, as a wage, gets around a similar, if not a little bit more than that. My figures aren't exact, but it's around those kind of figures. And I think that it's important that we talk to the university about how important the Student Union is to students and what the good work that they do. So really, as a source of income, I would lobby with the university to ensure that we can get as much funding as we can. I think the current Student Union team are doing a fantastic job in trying to raise awareness of where the money is going, and I would further that and get it, make sure that students do know where that money is coming from, why we're getting the amount that we're getting, and why, if not acceptable, even more. And I think that's something that I'll definitely use when talking to university officials. But I think it's very important when you do talk to university officials, while you are the head of the Student Union and leading the students, sometimes you can't just go in all guns blazing. You have to be calm and understanding, and you have to understand their point of view, and it's something that I pride myself in, is the ability to build rapport with people and to chat with people, and to, in that negotiation setting, I feel like I'm a very strong candidate to be that person to get the most out of the university and the most out of the Student Union.
Megan?
So one of my points in my manifesto was about ensuring that the university always can answer for their actions. And I think as part of that is to do with allocation of money and where money goes, and where perhaps it goes in some places in the university, not the Student Union, that perhaps it shouldn't. So I think it's about having the difficult conversations, which some people might not be prepared to do, but I'm fully prepared to do as your president, to ensure that the university allocate their spending the most effectively. the student union, it's not just activities and societies, it's everything else that goes on here as well. It represents the entire student body, so why is it not getting the funding that it deserves? And I think that's a question that I would be on one of the first items on my agenda to ask if I was to become the president.
And following in the same order, do you know either how much your manifesto would cost to achieve? Do you think it's a lot, a little, or do you know the exact figure? Danny and then
So with my manifesto, the actual pricing of it, there's no big spends, as in, and when I say big spends, I mean tens, hundreds, thousands of pounds, as I'm not promising to build another building. There are costs to my manifesto. Free SDI tests, for instance, are one. Increasing the living wage of SU staff is another. And increasing the amount of free sanitary products as well is another cost. Now, when it comes to costs, though, I'm kind of really hitting the point of that. There's no big spends. It's all about campaigns. It's all about what actively things that we can do to try and make that more. So in answer to the question, I don't have an exact figure, but I know that it's not as expensive as other manifestos have been over the years.
Megan?
I'm the same as Danny, so I don't have an exact figure, but I've deliberately tried to build my manifesto based on as little cost as possible. So a lot of the things that I've included are to do with improving what's already going on in the student union. I'd say the costs, the same as Danny's. I want to increase sanitary products on both campuses. That's going to come at a cost, and securing the safety bus, that's also going to come at a cost. But I wouldn't say anything I'm doing is going to become detrimental to the student union by the prices of what I'm trying to put forward.
Perfect. We're going to take questions from the audience. Anyone in the room have any questions they would like to ask? Brian?
I think Tyler was right to bring up sort of like the financial viability of some of these things, but even aside from that, I've been impressed with what both of you said regarding perhaps the influence on students working with the mayor's office and Danny with the stagecoach thing and then after stuff with the safety and all that. But as far as viability goes, have either of you scouted out any of those kind of possibilities? Have you had any of those conversations already, just to give us a glance of perhaps whether these things are actually possible?
So regarding both of the candidates' manifestos, have you done any checking or met with anyone that kind of suggests whether your election manifesto is possible and the commitments you've made are possible?
Me first.
Megan first, please.
Okay. So my point with involvement in the local council, I made that point in my manifesto after looking through the members of the local council and finding that there's no representative from the university. Whilst I've not had conversations with the local council, it's quite clear there's a gap there, and I think the research that I've done, and when talking to other students as well, they agree that perhaps that's a gap that needs filling, and someone needs to be on the local council. In terms of securing the safety bus, again, no actual conversations, but I've spoken to members that are in the current student union at the moment about why that doesn't run some weeks, and that's something that I'd like to work with whoever becomes the new VP of Education of Activities, because the reason there didn't seem to be a legitimate reason, and I think even going as far as employing someone to ensure that the safety bus runs every week is something I have to do.
Danny?
It's very hard when you're not a student union president to have those conversations directly about representing students. That I don't think should come as too much of a surprise. However, with the experience that I have, I've been a student union officer for the last 2 years, so I know how the student union works. I've been in direct contact with different sabbatical officers for those last 2 years as well as SU staff. So in terms of an SU side, I know what is feasible and what is not. And that helped derive that side of the manifesto. In terms of the other side, in terms of the campaigns area, one of the things you touched upon was the stagecoach and the buses. I think that's a very valid thing to come up with, to suggest, there are over 7,000 students at the University of Winchester. It accounts for about a fifth of the population of Winchester. At the moment, bus routes do not service this university or at least to the standard that it should do, considering a fifth of the population is there. With that in mind, I think it's only reasonable to go to Stagecoach, to have these discussions, sit down and say, right, this bus route can be achievable. We can have semi-regular buses hitting to the university on a daily basis, so people can make their lecture times from Winnell, from Week, from Bar End, from Stanmore, wherever you come from within the university. And even if you're travelling from the station, regular buses that go from the station to the university. They do it for people at work. They divert bus routes for people at work in mornings to get to the train station. They divert it for schools, but they're not doing it for the university. So I think it's completely reasonable for me to go over there and say, hey, why not us? 1/5 of the population and you're not including us. So I think that's where that comes from. But with other things such as rent and things like that, again, I know the MP rather well, Steve Bryan. I've met him with him several times. So I know I have met people. I've met senior management staff as part of the being an officer as well. I haven't explicitly had the conversations because I can't have those conversations because I'm not the student union president yet. So, I'm just a candidate. So I need to actually be a candidate before I can actively have those conversations about it. Viability, though, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions from the room? No? Okay, I'll go to the last two questions on here. Both of your manifestos mention cliff edge admission penalties in one way or another. How do you believe that you'll be able to convince the university to get rid of these penalties? Starting with Danny, please.
Absolutely. So I had a look at other universities before with this specific point and found out about the policies that they have there. Other universities don't have this cliff edge 40%, 1 second late and that's it, you're done. They introduce a time-based one, so the later you are, the more marks you lose, which I think is a much fairer way of doing that. At the moment, people are losing sleep, missing lectures, vital lectures for their studies to further their education as a result of staying up to do assignments and then potentially then having it capped as well. It's detrimental to their health, and I think it's to introduce a fair way of having this is how I pitch it, personally.
And Megan?
Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit perhaps not normal. I'm going to disagree with what Danny said. I just want to be very clear, as a part of my manifesto, I don't mention getting rid of 40% caps. Personally, I believe the punctuality is there for a reason. What I want to implement is that when academics are late to give us feedback, there are no consequences. Thankfully I've never been in this position myself, but I have friends at the university who, they've been waiting 3 weeks for 3 weeks late on feedback. There are no consequences there from the university. I couldn't fit this in my manifesto because it's just not enough words, but I want to try and stop the resubmissions of assignments. So if something goes wrong, it doesn't quite go to plan, and you resubmit, you're instantly capped at 40. I want to try and stop that because it's disheartening, it's gone wrong and you've given it a really good another chance, yet you're capped at 40 when it could have been a much better assignment. And in terms of consequences for academics, I didn't include in my manifesto how I'm going to do that because, quite frankly, I'm not sure yet. I think it's about when you get into office as president, having the discussions with the university on how to start making academics accountable, how to hold them accountable for a lack of punctuality when students have to be punctual or they are capped at 40. Thank you.
Okay, and the last question. Student union budgets are nowhere near endless. If it came down to it, would you prioritise an additional sabbatical officer in areas of welfare and well-being, or would you prioritise additional staff members who have experience and qualifications to deal with areas of welfare and well-being? Starting with Megan. So will you prioritise a SAB role, so someone who is elected year in, year out, or would you prioritise a staff member who has experience and qualifications and will be there for more than 1 year?
Question. I think it will be interesting this year to see how much the combination of education and welfare, how much they can dedicate their time to welfare. I think that having a sabbatical officer doing that role is a great start because I think everyone students under the student union are far more likely to know about a VP of Education and Welfare than they are maybe to approach a staff member. I think it's like breaking down those boundaries, and sometimes a staff member can seem much less approachable than a member of staff. So I would say as that officer is what I would prioritise.
And Dan?
As part of my manifesto, I look to bring in a Vice President Welfare dedicated role. However, I would actually disagree with Megan on this one, as I think that person with trained qualifications in this is so vital, and I think it's really good how we have introduced that this year for the first time. However, that doesn't mean that a VP Welfare is something that we should completely disregard. I would prioritise the person with qualifications to correctly deal and assess with welfare issues, so that if someone is struggling, they can actively they've been qualified and know exactly how to help this student. And the VP Welfare is much more of a long-term goal, and looking to get one in. If I can't do it in the next year, then the plans are in place and the budgets are in place to hopefully move towards one in the future. And I think that the VP Welfare role is not necessarily one where they can go to and talk to. It's much more about campaigning for welfare issues. So for an actual member of staff that can deal with students, that would be my priority. However, I would ideally like to have both.
Okay, we're just going to work out how long you have for your closing remarks. So, Danny, you have 30 seconds. Megan, you have 3 minutes. So we will start with Megan.
Okay, I'm not going to need 3 minutes. So, obviously, we've talked about lots of things here tonight. I hope that what we've talked about has shown that I'm ambitious and driven to create a better student experience for all. There's a lot of points in my manifesto that I haven't covered tonight just because we don't have time. So it is on the Student Union website and also on the Facebook page that I've got as well. I'm a candidate with realistic and achievable goals. I want everything I say in this campaign to be something I can achieve if I was to end up in office. I don't want to make any kind of falsities or promises that I can't keep. So if you want a realistic and achievable candidate, then vote Megan on Wednesday. Thanks.
And Danny, your 30 seconds.
Sure, I rambled. The light's great. Brilliant. Right, pretty much, my manifesto is online. You can read it. Everything that I want to run for is in my manifestos. You can watch my videos. I did an Ariana Grande take of Thank You Next. It's funny, go watch it. But other than that, I've said all I need to say, as you can tell. Yeah, please vote for me when it comes to voting. Polls open tonight at, midnight, 1 minute past midnight. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Please give it up for our presidential candidate. So that is the end of our candidate question time. Please do remember that voting opens at 1 minute past midnight tonight. There is also elections for our NUS delegates, and their manifestos are also available on our website. But please do make sure you vote and you use your preferences where appropriate. Have a good evening.